You probably know the story of Noah. There's a flood, there's an ark, the animals walk on two by two, and at the end there's a rainbow. It's one of the first Bible stories that most of us ever heard. We put it on nursery walls, we make kids' toys out of it, and we even highlight it in our children's Bibles, which is kind of strange when you think about it because it's one of the darkest stories in the entire Bible. I mean, the world is so filled with violence that God sends judgment, and almost everything and everyone is wiped away. And somehow we've turned it into baby shower decor, but that's kind of beside the point. What I want to focus on in this video is that there's a detail in this story that most of us miss. It shows up before the flood, and then it shows up again after the flood. It's the same wording, same diagnosis, same problem. Because the story of Noah is not just about God judging the world. It's about the thing that a fresh start cannot fix. And that's what makes this story so applicable to our lives today. You see, we think if we could just change the situation, if we could just change the environment, if we could just change our jobs, change our relationships, if we could just change our routine, change our circumstances, then maybe finally we would change too. But Genesis is going to show us something that is true in all of our lives. You can wipe the whole world clean and still not fix the human heart. Let's take a look. Before the flood, Genesis 6:5 says this: "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." And I don't want you to rush past this. Every inclination, only evil all the time. So what does God do? He sends the flood. The waters come and everything gets undone. And then slowly the water recedes. And Noah and his family step out of the ark onto dry ground with a fresh start in a new world. 8 people get a second chance at everything. And then God speaks again in Genesis 8:21. He says, "Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood." Did you catch that? Before the flood, every inclination of the human heart is evil. After the flood, every inclination of the human heart is evil. The most dramatic reset in human history. The world is wiped clean, started over, and God's diagnosis of the human condition hasn't changed at all. The water receded, but the problem did not. You see, the flood reveals something about the nature of sin that I think we often forget. Sin isn't primarily environmental. It's not about bad circumstances or just bad influences. No, it's internal. It's in our hearts. And you can change every single thing around a person, and yet the heart will not change. And I've watched people move across the country to escape themselves, change careers, end relationships, start over, and within a year, they're rebuilding the same life. Maybe in a different zip code, but the same outcome. Because the thing they were running from, it came with them. And the flood is a miniature. You cannot solve an internal problem with an external solution. So the question becomes, why have a flood at all then? And first we have to understand that the flood is real judgment. Genesis 6:11 says that the earth was corrupt in God's sight, full of violence. And God didn't look away. He didn't shrug. And listen, I don't think we want a God who would. I know this isn't popular in our culture today, but a God who doesn't take evil seriously is not a good God. He's indifferent. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of real injustice, if you've ever watched evil walk away clean, you don't want a God who shrugs it off in that moment. You want a God who rights the wrong. And the flood is God doing that. It's his judgment. But here's what keeps the story from just being terrified, because before God sends the flood in Genesis 6:6, he says this: "The Lord regretted that he made human beings on earth, and his heart was deeply troubled." And the Hebrew word here for deeply troubled, it describes grief of someone betrayed by someone they love. like a spouse, a close friend, a child, that hollow, sick feeling when someone you gave everything to just walks away. And that's what God felt like looking at humanity before the flood. He wasn't cold when he sent it. He was heartbroken. And then after the flood, God makes a covenant and puts a rainbow in the sky. And we take that rainbow and we put it on coffee mugs and kids' Bibles, and we assume we know what it means. But the Hebrew word here used in Genesis 9 for rainbow is the word for war bow. It's a weapon. And a war bow hung in the clouds, pointed upward, pointed towards heaven. And when Spurgeon saw this, an old theologian, he said that the rainbow is a picture of God laying down his weapon, restraining judgment, committing to something other than destruction. But notice what God doesn't say. He doesn't say the problem's solved. He says he won't flood the earth again. But the heart problem, the one that was there before the flood and that's still there afterwards, is still there. The rainbow doesn't say everything's fine. It's a promise, but there's still a question underneath it. And here's what you see when you look through the rest of the Old Testament. External fixes don't change internal hearts. The law doesn't do it. New leadership doesn't do it. New land doesn't do it. When you read through the Old Testament, you see Israel get fresh start after fresh start. They get new kings and new covenants and new chances, and the diagnosis is the same every single time. Every inclination of the human heart is evil. And God already knew this. In Jeremiah 31:33, buried in the middle of the Old Testament, he makes this promise that sounds completely different from anything that came before it. It says this, I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. Not on stone tablets anymore, not on the outside, but on the inside. You see, for the first time, God isn't talking about changing the environment. He's talking about changing the heart itself. It's a different kind of solution. So when Jesus shows up, people are still waiting for another external reset. They want a political revolution. They want a new kingdom built on power and force. But that's not what they get. What they get was a man who walks into the flood of God's judgment voluntarily. They get someone who absorbs everything the flood represented, the weight of human corruption, the cost of divine judgment, and who takes it on himself. You see, the ark in the story of Noah protected God from the people from the flood waters. Jesus doesn't just protect you from the storm. No, he enters into it with you. And then he rises from the dead. And Paul calls this a new creation. It's the same language as in Genesis, the same imagery as Noah stepping off the ark onto new ground. But this time, the new creation isn't external. It's not a reset of the world around you. No, it's something that's happening inside of you. In 2 Corinthians, we see that if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old is gone, the new is here. Not a new environment, a new heart. That's what the flood was always pointing to. Not a cleaned up version of old humanity, but something genuinely new from the inside out. And here's what I want to leave you with. If you follow Jesus, there's still temptation to treat the Christian life like a series of external resets. We get a new church, a new accountability group, a new reading plan, a new commitment. And listen, none of those things are bad. But if you keep counting on them to do what only God can do inside of you, you'll keep winding up in the same place. You see, the flood has already proved that doesn't work. What actually changes people is not new circumstances. It's the slow, sometimes invisible work of God remaking the heart from the inside. It's not always dramatic as a flood. Sometimes it's more like water working its way into stone over time. And listen, if you're not a follower of Jesus yet, if you're watching this from the outside, I want you to notice something. God responds to the human heart problem. His answer wasn't to give up. It wasn't to flood the earth and walk away. It was to become one of us, to go after the problem at its source. Come back to Genesis 8:21 one more time. After the flood, after the new start, after the rainbow, God looks at humanity and acknowledges the heart is still bent towards evil, and then keeps going anyway. He doesn't quit. No, he makes a new covenant. He promises he stays. Whatever fresh start you've tried and didn't work, whatever version of yourself you thought the new situation would produce, whatever you've been carrying and hoped would finally change, God already knows that. He knew that before the flood, he knew that after the flood, and he didn't stop. The flood didn't fix the problem, but it didn't make God quit either. And neither has anything you've done. God can remake you from the inside out if you let him. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this helped you see the flood in a new light. If this kind of content is helpful for you, make sure you're subscribed, and also check out my Substack, my weekly newsletter that I call Rethink. I send you things like this every single week. It's not academic or fluff, just practical biblical insights. And hey, leave a comment too. I'd love to know your thoughts on this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.